entertain. Okay. Go right down the middle of the road.
Kevin, you're a host of Shark Tank. Wouldn't people say the same thing about you? You're a show of a host of an entertainment show.
Have you ever heard me shill for a politician?
Yeah, every night.
Kevin O'Leary, Canadian businessman, Shark Tank host, and one of Donald Trump's most reliable defenders, sat on Abby Phillip's panel this week and made a bold claim. He told the entire table that entertainers should stay out of politics. His words, go right down the middle. Just entertain. Leave politics alone. Sounds simple until Ana Navarro stepped in. She looked right at him and asked the most obvious question in the room. Kevin, you host Shark Tank. That's an entertainment show. Shouldn't people say the same thing about you? And that's when it happened. O'Leary, a man who goes on CNN night after night defending Donald Trump, looked straight into the camera and said, have you ever heard me shill for a politician? Sir, we literally watch you do that every night. The moment was so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that the entire panel couldn't help but laugh. Because what else do you do when someone says something that bold with a completely straight face? And then Ana Navarro delivered the knockout line. Clean, simple, devastating, every night when you come here. 5 words. That's all it took. Argument over. If you enjoy breakdowns like this, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's break this all the way down.
Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip. Let's get right to what America's talking about. A whole new world for the kingdom. Disney announcing that Jimmy Kimmel will return to the air tomorrow night after days of backlash over his suspension. The company has been facing heavy criticism after pulling him off the air over what Disney calls ill-timed Charlie Kirk comments. But after the Trump administration threatened to punish ABC unless they did something. Today, 400 celebrities signed a letter comparing it to McCarthyism, and some Americans said they canceled their Disney Plus subscriptions. Now, we're told that Kimmel will be addressing the firestorm tomorrow, but Sinclair, one of the big owners of subsidiaries, say it'll preempt the show from the stations that it owns. Joining us in our fifth seat is Bill Carter, the former New York Times media reporter and author of The War for Late Night. So, Bill, what do you think is behind Disney bringing him back?
Well, I think Disney was pushed into the corner here. They had to make a decision. They were either going to capitulate or they're going to fight. I think they decided, given all the other circumstances, they had already conceded on the Stephanopoulos issue. They had conceded to Trump and paid off a settlement to him. And here they were. They had to either decide whether they're going to keep this star that they did like, they do back, or they're going to capitulate and give in. And I think they had no choice. I don't think Disney had a choice. This was clearly an abuse of power, and they could not give in. Otherwise, it would continue, and they could just had to stand up for it. Not just because of who they are as a company, but sort of as the principle of it. I really don't think someone like Bob Iger, who has taken his reputation very seriously, the head of Disney, by the way, was going to concede that he ought to now basically say, all right, I'll agree and I'll take away a star who I don't think did anything that seriously wrong.
Backlash to the backlash to the backlash. I mean, I think at the end of the day, one of the big original sins of this whole saga is the Trump administration deciding to make it clear to the whole world that they wanted to be involved. I almost imagine if they had not done that, this would have ended completely differently. Kimmel and Disney would have dealt with this behind closed doors. Maybe he would have been suspended for a few days. They would have dealt with the affiliates and we would be moving on. But Disney was forced to respond to the assumption many people have, which is that this was an attempt of the government to chill speech, which I think, for a lot of Americans, they don't like that.
I've been doing television for a lot of years. The only thing that matters long term, ratings. Tomorrow night, who's ever writing that monologue for him, he's going to get his best score in decades.
Probably.
Everybody in America is going to be tuning in. They're going to score huge ratings, and that's what matters on TV. Secondly, to consider, I go back to an interview with Johnny Carson, I think it was in the early 80s, when he said, I don't get into politics because why would I want to piss off 50% of my audience? And I think all comedians should think about that. They're entertainers, and they want to entertain people who had a long day. They want to be lifted up, hear something funny. They don't want to be dragged down in the toilet of politics. Michael Jordan said, I want to sell sneakers to Republicans too. I mean, what is this stuff? Entertainers entertain. Why get into this whole thing of partisan politics?
I think that's the lesson of this Kimmel thing. I think he'll do very well tomorrow night. Long term, ratings will matter for him, like everybody else. But the lesson to everybody is, if you're an entertainer, a musician, entertain.
Okay.
Go right down
So
the
if
middle
you're
of
an
the road.
Something, Kevin, you're a host of Shark
free
Tank.
speech rights?
Wouldn't people say the same thing about you? You're a show of a host of an entertainment
Have you
show.
ever heard me shill for a politician?
Yeah,
I shill,
every night when you come
I
here.
shill for policy. I'm a policy wonk. I don't get on stage saying, vote for this man, this woman. I say, here's what their policies do to American entrepreneurs.
But you-
good,
I-
bad,
all
and ugly.
right,
But
Pop.
I-
All
but
right,
okay,
Pop.
You know
The
what?
kettle says hello.
Thank goodness I'm
But
here.
Kevin, I mean, you are a guest here a lot, and I've heard you strongly criticize Democratic politicians. Maybe you don't shill
No,
for one
their
politician.
policy.
No, I know. I've heard you make. I've heard you make personal comments about Democratic politicians right here at this table. But to Anna's point, you have free speech rights just like everybody else does. I mean,
Can I
are
point
they
out-
not allowed? You're allowed to do it? Why is nobody? Why
Johnny
are comedians
Carson
not allowed?
was down the middle mostly, but if you were president, he made fun of you. He made fun of you if you were president. He did politics, in terms of a joke. If you were president, you were made fun of. And the presidents did not then get their back up and say, we got to stop that. I don't like him doing that, because he was Johnny Carson.
And
for
listen,
one thing.
one of the longest running comedy shows in history, Saturday Night
Absolutely. They
Live, has been making
make
fun
of presidents forever. Absolutely.
of every, of every
presidents have always,
affiliation.
you know what? And Abraham Lincoln had political cartoons made about him, and he didn't say close down the newspapers.
I don't think
That's-
SNL
And
made
if you
fun
were
of him.
here in the 90s, Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton,
Yeah.
I mean, but the other thing, I mean, look, maybe what you're saying is true, but Sinclair, one of the owners of these affiliates, they were planning to air this lengthy Charlie Kirk special in place of Jimmy Kimmel. And guess what? They didn't do it. They backpedaled and they dropped those plans and aired Family Feud instead. If it was so crystal clear that viewers really wanted more politics, but just right-leaning politics, why did Sinclair back off that?
I don't know that Sinclair backed off of that. In fact, Sinclair has actually made quite a stand by saying we're not going to be we're preempting Jimmy Kimmel's show tomorrow
Right,
night.
but they were going to air on Friday a documentary. They said in their whole statement about Jimmy Kimmel, they were like, we're going to air this documentary instead, and then they didn't do it.
And I don't have an answer for that, but I can tell you this, the conversation at the table tonight has not even touched on the fact that what Jimmy Kimmel did was insult an entire half of the nation and a grieving widow and people who had lost someone that was dear to them and a voice that was lost to America. And this was not about free speech, about politics. This was about somebody making a horrible decision.
What was the insult?
It was a horrible for him to come out and say that the murder was unrelated to what it really is, a leftist ideology that attacks someone who is a conservative ideology. Everybody knows that. And instead, he insulted half of
Charlie Kirk, though.
but what he did was he insulted half of America that was in the middle of grieving over the loss of someone we revered.
But can I tell you
And that
something?
being said, you have to also look and say, what is the FCC even for?
But can I say
the
something?
FCC is a licensing body.
Last night, that grieving widow, with incredible grace and compassion
wonderful.
that I think I wouldn't be capable of,
Oh, I agree.
came out and said that she forgave the killer
It was amazing.
of the man who killed her two babies. So I would say that if you're going to honor the Kirks, if you're going to honor what they stood for in terms of, and I disagree vehemently with a lot of the things he said, but he stood for free speech. And so I don't understand how the way to honor a man who stood for debate and free speech is to stifle free speech and penalize.
But the
I
piece
don't
you're missing,
understand
though-
how
Yeah,
we
but
can
Anna,
admire Erica Kirk
piece that you're
for
missing
so
in this-
gracefully forgiving the man who killed the father
And the
of
piece
her
that
two babies,
you're
and
choosing
we
to
can't
miss in this-
forgive a
the piece that
comedian
you're choosing
for
to
a
miss in
lead-in
this
to
is
a
the fact
joke.
that Trump is not the one who said get him off the air. Disney made a business decision. They have a fiduciary obligation to their shareholders, to their affiliate stations, and to their advertisers.
But Phil, we were all
And they
here.
absolutely did.
Phil, we were all here when the FCC chairman went on a podcast and said we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Which is what
and,
the
and
FCC is
here's
supposed to
okay.
do.
Here's
No.
what?
No.
Okay,
no.
Let's all right. Hold on.
How
Let's
many of
just
y'all
let me
have
just
read the
play
actual Communications Act of
Rand. Let me play what
1934
Rand Paul had to.
that
I'm going to play what Rand Paul had to say
I
about this
have too.
because he was asked specifically about Brendan Carr's comments and whether or not that's what the FCC should be doing. Listen.
Senator, do you believe that Brendan Carr's comments were appropriate? absolutely inappropriate. Brendan Carr's got no business weighing in on this. But people have to also realize that despicable comments, you have the right to say them, but you don't have the right to employment. And the FCC was wrong to weigh in, and I'll fight any attempt by the government to get involved with speech.
Right.
All right, so look, it's pretty clear. The FCC doesn't have a role in saying, oh, Jimmy Kimmel, I don't like what you said. We're going to threaten your broadcast license. And sure, ABC has a right to suspend their host, even to fire him. But by putting himself in the middle of that, which he did intentionally, that changed the game in this conversation. And I really do think it probably changed the game for Disney in terms of how they wanted this to end, in terms of how quickly they needed this to end and bring Jimmy Kimmel back.
No, I think that if we were to start with, again, the moment of forgiveness of Sister Erica, where we had a moment of interruption in a polarized society and really a spiritually decayed culture.
I think your microphone just slipped into your jacket. If you
Oh, is that right?
move it up. All right.
Then what I was really saying was,
Okay. All right, I'll give you a moment to just fix your microphone, but I promise I'll come back to you.
Cornell
Okay?
is fishing for his microphone. I am very happy that this seems to be getting resolved, or it's moving towards a resolution, because you know we talk a lot about Kimmel, we talk a lot about Colbert. They're going to be okay, but there are hundreds of people that work on those shows. There's over 200 people that work on the Kimmel show, and these are people that were hurt badly because of COVID and shows being with skeletal crews. These were people that were hurt badly by the writer's strike that hurt so many TV shows. And so, you know, it's not just Kimmel you're hurting.
Yeah.
It's a lot of American families.
Go ahead.
I'm back. I appreciate that, brother. No, that when you have a moment of interruption, given the love of money tied to greed, bottom line, revenues and eyeballs, and the hatred escalating, deep distrust on both teams, Republicans and Democrats. How do you sustain that kind of moment of interruption? Because forgiveness is a form of love. John Coltrane's birthday tomorrow, love supreme. How do you sustain those moments to push back the forces of hatred, push back the forces of greed, push back the forces of distrust? And the only way you do it is by more examples in which people are able to say, I mean, Jimmy Kimmel, for me, you know, I don't spend a lot of time on the brother. I don't think he's the most talented brother either. Now, that's one of the few times I might agree with Brother Trump. He's not the most talented brother. And even that slot itself doesn't have too many people of color. So, I mean, they do what they want to do. But I will defend his right to speak. Just like I defend this brother's right to be wrong or right, because that's a libertarian issue. It's a libertarian issue.
And I think
it's an American issue, Cornell.
Well, it's a human issue. It's a human.
It is the First Amendment to the Constitution. The First Amendment that was made to the Constitution was about freedom of the press and freedom of speech.
So we've dealt with
of slavery.
I know, but we have dealt with the legalities of it.
Absolutely, but it's human. I want to keep it at the deeper human. I don't want flag waving. I want love, justice at the center of it.
Listen, I to your point, right? There's a lot of legalities of it. I think it's super important to talk about what should the role of the government be versus what should the role of a private company be. But then there's Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian, the human being. What should he do? What does he owe the country in this moment when he does come back?
Well, I think he's going to come out and say something conciliatory. He's not going to apologize in a formal way, and he's certainly not going to give at the insistence of the Sinclair people to give a donation. I think that's kind of over the top. And he's a very strong-minded guy, Jimmy. I know him well, and he's a very good guy. He offered a very heartfelt comment to the family before any of this happened, by the way. So I expect him to be very strong, because he didn't bend here. This is an interesting thing. I think he would have been on the air already if he just came on and abjectly apologized. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to try to clarify this and say, and I think he thinks that he didn't say anything that was the sickest conduct possible, which is the way the FCC guy said it. I think he was, by the way, he didn't know about the actual case, the prosecution's case on Monday
night.
So he was making a comment irrespective of that. So, and he's not the kind of person who would ever attack or demean a person after this kind of tragedy. So I think that's misrepresenting him. I understand people are hurt about it. I understand that. But I would not expect Jimmy Kimmel to be, prostrate with apology. Yeah, that's not his style.
All right, well,
I
we'll all
expect
be
him-
watching tomorrow night.
I want him to
We'll all be
entertain.
watching.
Now, let's actually examine the argument Kevin O'Leary tried to make before Ana Navarro shut it down in 5 words because it collapses instantly under even basic scrutiny. O'Leary pointed to Johnny Carson as proof that entertainers should stay neutral. But there's a major problem with that claim. Johnny Carson made political jokes all the time. He mocked Nixon, Reagan, Carter, whoever was in power. Going down the middle never meant staying silent. It meant holding everyone accountable equally. And Kevin O'Leary knows that. History makes this even clearer. Saturday Night Live has been mocking presidents for over 50 years. And how did actual presidents respond? George H.W. Bush loved Dana Carvey's impression of him so much he invited him to the White House. George W. Bush was portrayed as clueless by Will Ferrell for years. Men laughed along because they understood something fundamental. In a free country, criticism and satire come with the job. Donald Trump, completely different story. He's called for broadcast licenses to be revoked. He's demanded investigations into Saturday Night Live. He's responded to jokes with threats of government action. At one point, the FCC chairman even suggested to Disney they could handle criticism the easy way or the hard way. Those were the words from a federal regulator over a late-night joke. And when Senator Rand Paul, not exactly a liberal, calls that absolutely inappropriate, you know the argument has collapsed. Now let's talk about the Jimmy Kimmel situation. The outrage, completely manufactured. The claim was that Kimmel insulted half the country by making a joke about Charlie Kirk. But here's the reality. Most Americans had never even heard of Charlie Kirk before this controversy. He had a niche ideological audience. Meanwhile, Kimmel's audience is broad and mainstream. Most viewers that night didn't even know who he was. But overnight, a coordinated push turned Kirk into a national symbol, elevating criticism into a supposed attack on half the country. That's not organic outrage. That's a machine. And Kevin O'Leary, he was helping run it while telling others to stay out of politics. Here's the contradiction in plain terms. O'Leary hosts an entertainment show, then goes on CNN regularly to make political arguments, defend Trump, and criticize Democrats. That's allowed. But the second Jimmy Kimmel makes a joke, suddenly the rule becomes stay in your lane. So let's be honest, this isn't about principle. It's about control. Free speech for me. Silence for you. That's the entire philosophy. And Ana Navarro exposed it perfectly and without raising her voice, without a long speech, just 5 words that held up a mirror. Every night when you come here. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever seen a more manufactured culture war than this Kimmel-Kirk situation?